Aloha and welcome to our bulletin for BCN News. Leading our news tonight, 25 passengers arrived on Monday's flight this week. This would be the last lot of passengers before quarantine-free travel will commence in the coming weeks. Here's Losana Sioneholo with more on this story.
According to the National Disaster Management Office, the 25 passengers consist of 11 singles, 2 couples, 4 families and 1 infant who are returning residents, essential workers and others of Niue descendants. The passengers are currently isolating in the village of Awasele, Liku, Makefu, Tamakautonga, Alofi, Tuapa and Fualahi. In the next fortnight, on Monday the 27th of June, Niue will commence its quarantine-free travel for incoming passengers to the island. Passengers will no longer need to quarantine or undergo home isolation. The advice still continues to urge passengers and locals to help keep our communities protected from COVID-19 by following the protocols of health and government officials.
The government's annual Appropriations Bill 2022 was introduced to the Whānau Ekepule for the second reading yesterday. In the last reading, the government had a budget deficit of $12.5 million. But yesterday, the deficit was reduced to $9 million. The reductions are noted under the recurrent operational expenditure, capital projects investment and development projects, which was reduced from the original amount of $46.9 million to $44.9 million. For the development partner, investment and development projects expenditure budget was reduced $10 million to $7.3 million. The appropriated expenditure budget of $1.4 million for the Office of the Premier and Cabinet was also approved by the Whānau Ekepule yesterday. Members discussed at length the salaries of public servants, but agreed that it is the prerogative of the government to decide how much it is willing to spend on the salaries of the public servants. Of note is the salary of the Secretary to the government of $120,000. There are 430 public servants on the government payroll. The sitting of the Niue Legislative Assembly was the first held at the new chambers at the Whale Whānau 2 at Halamahanga yesterday. The main proceedings was the second and third and final reading of the government's annual Appropriations Bill 2022 to 2023.
Premier Dalton Tangelangi extended the congratulatory sentiments of the Whānau Ekepule on the occasion of the recent celebrations of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and the milestone Platinum Jubilee commemorating her 70 years as monarch and head of the Commonwealth of Nations. Premier Tangelangi also extended congratulations to Sir Colin Tukuitonga on his recent award of the Knights Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit. He briefly informed the Whānau on the ongoing investigation of the grounded Taiwanese fishing vessel on Pearridge Reef. Aside from the budget, the Minister of Finance, Crossley Tatui, tabled the Public Revenues Amendment Bill 2022 with the special provisions for financial reporting and audit. Also tabled by the Minister of Finance were the budget estimates 2022-2023 for the state-owned enterprise Niue Philatelic and Numismatic Corporation Group.
The people of the village of Mutalau are still coming to terms with the sudden loss of their former deputy chair of the village council, Edward Patrick Sietu, affectionately known as Aki or Etu to all. He was a 34-year-old young man taken too soon. BCN News understands Mr. Sietu passed away due to complications caused by pneumonia. He was admitted to the Niue Fall Hospital on Sunday afternoon, but his condition had already deteriorated. Hospital sources want to make clear that Mr. Sietu was not infected with COVID-19, as Niue remains with 0 community cases of the virus. According to hospital sources, plans were in place for medevac to New Zealand on Monday this week, but sadly he passed away on Monday morning surrounded by his loved ones. Edward Sietu was first elected to the Mutalo Village Council as a 25-year-old in 2012. From 2018 to 2021, he was the deputy chairperson of the village council. He served 3 terms as a member of the Mutalo Village Council last year. Edward Patrick Sietu was the son of Pete Sietu and her late husband, Etuata Sietu. He was the longtime partner of Sergeant Juliana Dana Tongahai. His funeral will be held in 2 weeks' time when his mother returns from New Zealand. Alan Tano is an international technical official for the 2022 Pacific Mini Games. And just earlier this morning, he arrived at Saipan, Northern Marianas, just in time for the Games. Here's Losana Sioniholo with more on this story.
Mr. Tano, a renowned sportsperson of the island and having received a Niue Community Service Award last year, has served as chef de mission for Team Niue at many regional and international events. He opened Tano's Gym in 1994, where he trained many athletes who have represented Niue nationally and internationally, including the first bodybuilding team to compete at the South Pacific Bodybuilding Championship. Early last month, weightlifting expert Mr. Tano received an invitation to be an international technical official for weightlifting at the Northern Marianas 2022 Pacific Mini Games starting from the 17th to the 25th of June. Mr. Tano says that it's a pity that Niue is not in the Games in outrigger, golf and weightlifting. Mr. Tano also received an invitation late last month to be an international technical official at the upcoming Birmingham Commonwealth Games.
The Hapu Village Show Day took place last Saturday. Despite the gloomy skies, the people of Hapu were joyful in celebrating 52 years since the show day first began. Here's more on the story.
A great turnout and show of support was seen by the many locals from around the island who gathered at the Hapu Tuasea school grounds to enjoy the 3rd village show day of the year for the island. A great variety of food stalls selling traditional Niue food and delicious foreign delicacies. An array of agricultural produce beautifully displayed, showcasing the hard work of Hapu farmers and growers. And an outstanding display of the Hapu women's fine talents in weaving, arts and handcrafts presented in the Tuasea School Hall. Some of the key requests to the government heard in the speeches of the village representatives included a scale to weigh the agricultural produce at the show day for each village and not rely on the scale provided by the government. The request from the Hapu Council of Women was furniture for the newly designated handcraft space. Youth Leader Rokal had announced the government for funding support, whether big or small, to help with the Tuasea workout gym space. In response to the request, the Premier generously announced in his speech that the government has gifted $10,000 to help support the youth's ambition to fix and or upgrade the gym space. While for the following request, he says that the government will continue to support the village, but he also emphasized not to wait or rely for the government, but to help themselves first, then the government can help as well.
And that is our news bulletin for tonight. Do join us again next week on Tuesdays and Thursdays for more of our local bulletin. Until then, wishing you all a safe weekend. Stay safe, stay warm, and stay healthy. Kia monuina.